Okay, good evening, everyone, from the Hermitage at 6:30 on Tuesday night. You probably can tell that Luang Por is not here. He's not hiding in the back or anything. Um, he's off to California for just a short visit to finish up a dental procedure. So, leaving me here to man the post. And we'll have our usual format, starting out with a bit of meditation this evening, and followed by some reflection and time for Q&A, as usual. So let's start with just chilling out a bit and settling in and bringing the energy back from the mental realms, if that's where it's been, and into the body. It's a center of our attention is for a period of meditation, just bringing it back to earth, element, water, fire, air, just the basic experience of being in a body, the whole thing. So let's sit with a comfortable and relaxed posture, upright, energetic as well as relaxed. I found myself slumping here a little bit, so kind of straighten up and let the energy move up the spine. Let the shoulders relax and release any of the tension from a day of activities. Yeah, just tune into where there might be any kind of holding or tension, usually in the face, is where it sometimes appears, around the eyebrows or the muscles around the eyes. Collect it. The jaw is a good place for any tension to reside. So just be aware of those hot spots and let them relax. Shoulders drop. Let the neck sit nice and straight. Let the head sit nice and straight on the top of the shoulders with a nice aligned neck. Open the chest. Any tension in the belly, let the belly open up and relax. Ground yourself with whatever's contacting the surface, your sit bones, legs, feet on the floor if you're sitting in a chair. Just try and be aware of that lower part of the body and let the energy move in a firm, grounding way into that area. Let it be a relaxed, broad attention. No need to bear down with your mind on any one particular small place. So ground yourself, feeling the solidity of the body, the whole body. Experience the spaciousness of relaxed muscles, So there's groundedness and there's spaciousness in the face, shoulders, open, relaxed, but solid. Maybe say a word or two that's significant to you that kind of sums up a very pleasant, open state of mind. Something like peace or gentle, aware. Some people use the word Buddho. And allow the attention to rest with the rhythm of the breathing in and out throughout the whole body. Let the mind just settle with that, move into a connection and eventually possibly a unity with that grounded, spacious, rhythmic in and out breathing, uncomplicated. And allow yourself to just stay with that for the next bit of time. Okay, take a moment to shift, change your posture if you need to. Get comfortable again. Wake up if you've dozed off. So as I mentioned at the beginning, at 6:30, Luang Por is off on a brief journey back down to California to finish up some dental work, and planning, all going well, planning to get that done tomorrow and be back late tomorrow night in time for our Paba coming up this weekend. I don't know how many people know it, but sitting in front of me off the camera is a computer screen that shows the live chat and the few other bits and pieces of information. It tells me that there's 27 people tuned in, and there's a little thumbs up, and the number beside that is 3. And I think that's great. I haven't said a word practically, and already there's 3 thumbs up. I wonder if I just sit here for another hour. That'll be good enough. Oh, just went up to 6. I'm just kidding. Please don't feel obligated to to do that. I just find it kind of interesting to see all that happening. So I just got back myself from a trip back east to North Carolina, visiting my sister and brother, and Upasaka Debbie Stamp from Abayagiri also joined in she flew in from California. I flew in from here in Portland, and my sister flew in from Boston. We all joined at my brother's. Debbie knows them quite well, and so she came along to spend a little bit of time and saw an old friend and former Sangapala board member, Noel Brewer, and his family. So it was a nice gathering back in North Carolina. That was just for a few days, and just got back late last night, so kind of a little bit blurry-eyed, maybe a little bit of mental blurriness too. But nice to be back as always in our hermitage here. It was over the 9/11 weekend, Saturday, and happy to report that we weren't hijacked or anything like that. So that word actually has kind of come up a bit in the past bit of time, hijacking, and even with, especially as say with the 9/11 weekend. But it came up in another context recently too, that kind of caused me to do some thinking, pondering. It was a while back, and then more recently as well, that a person I know who has some concerns about vaccinations kind of referred to the process as getting an injection and the substances going in and hijacking the body, hijacking the cellular processes to do what vaccines do. Mount a antibody response, mount a defense in response to a kind of a manufactured threat. And just concerned about that process of how that happens, of something coming in and hijacking your body. And this is somebody that I, very much like in many ways. And so it just caused me to think a bit about the human body, really. I think from my background as a nurse, I have this natural interest in how the body works, and I don't really understand completely, as best I should, the whole thing around vaccines and how it works, etc. But do remember from my training in nursing about the body in general, and that the body is a very active place inside, and all the things like viruses and bacteria and other pathogens that come along, get into the body. We think of them often as hijacking our bodies. They come in, they're coming into our bodies, and they're taking over. And viruses, do that. Viruses go into cells, and they use the cellular mechanism to reproduce, and then they burst out of the cells, and many times more, and keep on this process. And so, in different ways, bacteria, other pathogens, parasites of different kinds. They all use, if you will, use the body for their for what they do. I don't think they have a whole lot of intention, mental intention, but there is this drive of life to survive, and this is how they survive, by using nutriment from this body and using it as a way of reproducing, very basic things. And to them, it's not hijacking. They're just doing what they do. It's just part of nature. But we see it that way. Yeah, we see it that way because, we really regard these things here as ours. And that those other things that are using it, even ones that come from the outside, like mosquitoes or whatever, or, a lion or a tiger who sees us as a food source, maybe. We think that somehow they are the invaders in taking over, what is rightfully ours. But it's good to kind of maybe step back and get a little philosophical about it. It's like, really, is this body really ours? In some ways, I kind of think, we're just as much a hijacker as as any of these other beings that are using the body. Our consciousness comes into the body, and it resides, around the body, or in association with it, I guess, would be a better way, not to define it too closely. In fact, in the Buddhist teachings, there is a distinction between consciousness and body-mind, nama-rupa and vijnana. And the Buddha describes it as like two sheaves of sticks. Consciousness, one sheaf, and or vijnana, and nama-rupa, body-mind, is another. And that they lean on each other, kind of independence on each other. They're talked about in separate ways, as separate functions, but they do support and lean on each other. So our, consciousness, in a sense, our conscious experience is part of that process of, in a sense, hijacking the body, hijacking the body and the mind. I think the thing that's different for us, as opposed to bacteria and viruses and other pathogens in our body, is that we not only have the ability to get in there and hijack the bodily process, but we're hijacking the intellectual process too, and creating all sorts of things with that, using the intellect, using the power of the brain as the actual organ, and the mind, intellect itself. We're kind of hijacking that whole process and using it in some way. So it's really good to reflect, like, who's really the hijacker, and what is the hijacker? Really, when you look at it too, and reflecting on it from that, position of not self, and kind of contemplating the characteristic of not self in relation to all of our experience, um, we look at it and reflect on it. It's our attachment, aversion, and confusion, greed, hatred, and delusion. But I like the words attachment, aversion, confusion. That's what's really that's the hijacker. That's what's controlling the scene, if you will. Using the body and the mind, greed, hatred, and delusion, using um, all the experiences that we glean from our sense bases, from our six senses, the five physical ones, and the six of the mind, intellect, mind base. Um, those forces of attraction, aversion, delusion are constantly hijacking this body and this mind to either get what we want, get something that's going to bring us a simple pleasure, or get away from something that's unpleasant. We use the body to do that. We use the mind to do that. And it's all under the influence of a lot of confusion as well. So these are the hijackers, the supreme hijackers of our experience of this body and this mind through the six sense bases. Back on the level of the body, uh, these all these processes that we think shouldn't be happening, again, just follow it's nature following its course, and all these competing forces for this body. And it's kind of a war zone in here. There's this constant activity going on of things trying to take over, and the body's defenses trying to, um, neutralize them. And most of it is going on beyond our awareness. But it's still happening. It's only when it gets really out of control that we notice that it's going on. When we get when some sort of organism sneaks in and beyond the recognition of the defense system, and starts creating havoc before everything kicks in to take care of it, or something that it's just completely unaware of or very overpowering. It's only then that we actually notice this war going on. Or, like, say we get a vaccine and we get a sore arm, or we get, a few unpleasant symptoms for a day or 2 days or whatever. It's only then that we actually notice these processes happening. So all of this is happening behind the scenes all the time. And we don't see it happening. And then with all of the other mental processes, our desires and our aversions, a lot of the times that goes really kind of unconscious, not noticed consciously. We just react. These forces are happening blindly, steering our sights and sound, steering our eyes and our ears and our tongue, our nose and our body in the physical world to try and take in the pleasant objects of the senses, the nice sounds, the nice sights and tastes and experiences of the body, or trying to get away from the unpleasant ones. This is all happening often very unconsciously. That's the confusion or the delusion of being hijacked. So it's just good to reflect on that. It really brings up, me, just the sense of, wow, this is all happening. I don't really have anything to do with it. I don't have any control over it. There is no control in many aspects of it. Um, there is a limited amount of control that we can have as we establish reactive habit patterns. But um, and the power that we do have is to bring our skillful qualities into existence, and energize them, and as Ajahn Sucitto says, potentate them, make them more potent. And that's through skillful attention and mindfulness, which are part of the basic process of developing skillful approaches to how we can bring in some extra help to fight the war that's going on. We can hire and train our own mercenaries to kind of insert their skills uh, in this process. And yeah, there's just a way of reflecting on all this, even the development of the skillful qualities with our mercenaries, our paid mercenaries. Um, just to reflect, though, that this is constantly a process that um, can't be characterized as anything regarding oneself. And the fact that it's all a process of developing skill, avoiding unskillful things, and reinforcing that over and over again without any clear and solid permanent agent who's doing it. The three reflections, anicca, dukkha, anatta, are the core of how we should be spending our contemplative time as we calm our mind and get it still. And oftentimes, as it's presented in the teachings, we recognize that which is changing, constantly altering, is impermanent, as unsatisfactory. And then once we regard it as unsatisfactory, and part of the conditioned process, can we really see this as, regard this as who I am? That's the traditional way of reflecting. But sometimes it's also useful just to go directly to that reflection of not self and see it happening right in the present moment, just with our bodies. What's really happening? Is there somebody really in charge of all of this that's going on with our conditioned impulses and thoughts that have come from the past? Is there any absolute control over that once it's been set in motion? The only control is by using our attention skillfully in the present moment to see this all happening and to regard it with a bit of just a little bit of objective distance so that we're not enmeshed and lost in it. So this is the control we have, is by remembering, using mindfulness to remember to step back and watch this from just a bit of a distance so that we're not so enmeshed and connected with it. Once we see that and get a hint of that, then this realization of this, oh, this is something that's just happening. It's a series of moment-to-moment events, and it's all connected, but it's the sense of me being involved with it is just an illusion. So it's a very big and grand illusion, but it is an illusion. So, it doesn't mean we completely unplug and deny the existence of all of these things happening, but we see it with discernment. We see it with wisdom as it really is. And, for the sake of having a comfortable mind and a comfortable body, and one that's conducive to um, uh, contemplation, we do hire and induce the good qualities, and um, all the paramis that we talk about, generosity and kindness and skillful ways of being with others in the world, and patience, and all of them are the hired help to kind of help fight the battle against the delusion. And there's a lot of input that comes into our lives that really challenges us, and a lot of things in the mental world that we have to experience just because we were born as a human being, and we have these six sense bases, and they receive input from the world around us and the world within us. And there's oftentimes not only in the physical body but in the mental realm, there's assaults that we have to contend with that we wouldn't have invited on our own. And um, uh, we have to have a skillful repertoire to deal with that, and particularly things like uh, the development of wisdom, discernment, panya, is one of those parami, as well as metta, loving kindness, to create a field, a playing field, a battlefield that can uh, let the more unskillful ones pass away, of their own accord, once we've gotten tired of feeding them and supporting them, and we've fed the more skillful ones in the playing field, to the extent where they take charge and create the space for us rather than the other ones. I remember it, we often, all of us have our challenges and our difficulties, and monastics are no different. And just people sometimes approve and like what we're doing, and sometimes people disapprove and dislike what we're doing and the way we're doing it. And so we get involved in the whole praise and blame thing as well, until we're a bit wiser. But one of the things that one of the phrases that I remember Ajahn Suchito saying in a talk somewhere is like, just to be really sensitive to yourself, and watch what happens when adversity comes your way. People, we're all subject to praise and blame, and people are going to come at us and tell us that what we're doing is bad, or what we're doing is wrong, or in our case, oftentimes anachronistic. This is, monastic form is, old time stuff. Let's get with it. Come into the 21st century. Um, or we get accused of all sorts of, different kinds of things, all of us in different ways. And not to let the word he used again, part of the theme for the night is he says, not to let them hijack your loving kindness. Whatever happens, whether it's perceived as coming externally or whether it's your own internal mind base, your own habits inside of you, is whatever comes at you and is trying to punch you down, um, don't let it hijack your loving kindness. Don't let them hijack your loving kindness. I always thought that was a really powerful, statement, saying, well, let's stand up to this. Let's not believe all the stories that come to us both from the outside world and the inside world. Let's receive them with a kindness and maybe a little bit of healthy skepticism, um, but not buy into it. Don't let it hijack us. So I found that very useful in tough times when feeling challenged, to bring up that, there is that loving kindness there that can be tapped into as a way of not succumbing to the invaders that are coming and trying to disrupt our minds. So just in the way that we take medicines or treatments, take care of the body, help keep it in balance. We do that with Dhamma as well for our minds. Uh, I think it was Upasaka Gi who has a title of one of her talks, like a healthy dose of Dhamma for the troubled mind. So can all just remember to take our medicine, take our Dhamma medicine as well as our other medicines, then maybe we can slowly but surely win the battle. So anyway, that's just a few kind of groggy comments for the evening, and maybe we'll open it up to if anybody has any questions. Let's see. I'm just going to take a quick look through the chat room. I don't think I saw any early on. Oop. There's lots of good evenings and hellos. Okay. First question that I see in the list is contemplation part and parcel of all meditations? Kind of depends on how you define the word contemplation, I think. Uh, Contemplation often is thought of as an active process using thought, verbal thought in the mind to bring up certain considerations or aspects, particularly in this case, part of practice like contemplation of anicca, dukkha, anatta, maybe using occasionally some words. It doesn't at all have to necessarily involve verbal thought. Contemplation just means to bring in, essentially, to bring in for consideration and for reflection. And one can use images or just using like an initial thought, like anicca, impermanence, and then just plant one's attention at a certain, say, a sense door or a certain theme, and then just notice say, the quality of anicca in regard to that particular place that you anchor your attention. And it doesn't have to involve much word, verbalization in the mind at all. In fact, the less the better in a sense. That sometimes it can be fairly active, but mostly using words to just kind of establish a place to put the attention and then experience it on a more, visceral level, a more experiential level, rather than just on a conceptual level, because we spend too much time in our concepts anyway, even the good concepts. It's nice to let those go. Even the more calming meditations that you might want to call samatha practice, which would be tuning into the breathing and the feelings, the vedana in the body, the moods of the mind and how they're reflected in the body, and cultivating attention around soothing aspects like breathing or visualizations. That could be called contemplation, and as well. So it doesn't have to be verbal. So in the sense that you're consciously bringing an object into the mind, whether it's a word or an image or a bodily experience, the breathing or the presence of the body, the sensations in the body, whether it's used for insight or whether it's used for calm or whether it's used for both, you could say that that's contemplation. It's all part of the same thing. They kind of all meld together. So, yeah, in a sense, using that broad word or using the broad definition of the word contemplation it is part and parcel of all meditations. Contemplating and meditating are kind of the same thing. Okay, how does one skillfully develop dispassion for the bad, in quote, things in the world? Well, just I think it's useful to kind of draw a distinction um, between dispassion and indifference. Sometimes, we think that um, we have to push away things that are bad. I guess indifference isn't quite the right word I was looking for. Um, so, Hmm, you backtrack a little bit. Dispassion, how does one develop dispassion for the bad things implies that one has a passion for the bad things that one needs to counteract. And our passion for the bad things isn't so much something that we want to have bad things, but it's a passion that's related to aversion in a sense. It's a passion for getting rid of something. And how do we develop that? Um, Mind that can be not passionately averse to the bad things, not involved with the aversion, and develop a sense of separation from it. And really, the approach is just to really get to know what those bad things are that one is feeling aversion to. Um, Bad meaning unskillful or causing harm, and whether that's internal or external, seeing them for what they really are, and realizing that the more we uh, get involved with them through wanting them to be different or wanting them to go away, if it's something that we don't have any control over, like, say, an internal mental attitude, if that's one of the bad things in the world that um, one is being swept up in, um, then we start to see it for what it really is, and this sense of uh, not being fooled by it, not being drawn into the story in such a way that it creates more negative reactivity. Um, then one becomes disenchanted with that. You see it for what it really is. You see the bad internal state in your own heart, in your own anger or your own aversion. You see that for what it really is, which is conditioned reaction. Um, and you see that buying into it and reacting against it and moving into it um, just creates more of the same problem over and over and over again. It's that kind of passion for getting involved in the unskillful things. You have to see clearly in order to develop a dispassion for it by seeing it for what it really is, letting it not enchant you anymore, losing the enchantment that it has over you. Um, and then you realize that it's your clinging, your holding to that experience that creates the suffering. So once you see that and see that clearly, dispassion will naturally arise, and the process of clinging or holding on to that which is causing harm in your heart can be released. In terms of external bad things or unskillful things that are happening in the world, one has to be careful about saying, develop dispassion for those, because that might sound like develop indifference. And that's not, indifference is not a cure for the bad things in the world. Um, Taking care of the unskillful things in our own heart is where the cure for taking care of the unskillful things in the world has to start. That's where we have to start when we want to affect the external world around us. But what we can develop slowly for the bad things in the external world is equanimity, realizing that we have a concern, we have a compassion, we have a kindness. We want things to be better for the world, or the bad things we want to see go away in the world that cause harm. And then we see what we can do as one individual right now. And we do what we can to the extent of our capacity, but we have enough wisdom to know where we have to draw the line, where we don't have enough skill say, to make an effect against that bad thing, um, and where we need to, if we're spending too much of our energy and we're getting burnt out, getting fatigued from the battle against the bad things in the world, then that's no good either. We have to look after our own energy and our own abilities. So it's knowing our own abilities, and when we have to draw back and regroup. So is developing equanimity, um, is the skill, not so much developing a dispassion for those external things. Okay. Let's see. Psychological warfare is a reality. I know you said metta can help in situations of praise and blame. However, this is an extreme situation which tends to evoke fear and sometimes hatred. How can we deal with this? It's a kind of I'm not quite sure what particular form of psychological warfare is being referred to in this thought train here. Um, and it's certainly, some attacks, if you will, on our well-being, mental well-being, go well beyond praise and blame. Um, and those kinds of situations that evoke fear and sometimes hatred are very powerful. Taps into very deep levels of conditioning in our hearts, which almost all of us experience in some way or another, whether we want to think so or not. um, and there's different reflections or different ways to regard these um, internal struggles, and um, different antidotes, different reflections, different qualities that we can build on to help us to do that. Um, and metta is often talked about, and sometimes I think it's kind of talked about in a way that mm, doesn't give it its full power. A lot of times when we hear about metta, we think, oh, just be nice, be kind, you know, uh, isn't the world wonderful? Isn't everybody wonderful? That kind of a bit overly simplistic and overly simplified, and kind of a little bit, you know, Pollyannish kind of feeling that we can sometimes uh, associate with metta practice. But loving kindness is really a very, very powerful. Real metta is very powerful, and at its fullest development as a Brahmavihara, uh, can really contain and hold even the most extreme mind states that can be induced either by oneself or with the help of others in the psychological warfare that causes fear and hatred. So, to redefine how we regard metta, and we really realize the power of that very broad-based, uh, boundless quality. Um, I think that's useful to consider. But there's also other paramis like patience. Kanti is what the Buddha calls the supreme incinerator of all defilements. This is quite a powerful term too, and that's a very, again, that's a very, that can be developed to a very broad-based, very wisdom-based kind of state of mind, because it not only, has a lot of internal strength, but it has a lot of wisdom too, because it is very um, aware of uh, not fighting to control that which we can't control, but expanding one's equanimity and patience go oftentimes quite well, quite a lot together, but patience being, more of the emphasis on uh, being at peace with that which is difficult, unpleasant, and what seems like it might be unbearable. Uh, Patience, not just gritting your teeth, but really expanding, opening, and being able to contain and be with these difficult mind states, difficult situations that evoke fear and hatred. And then it's in that spaciousness that these fear and hatred can be allowed to dissolve. Uh, they just have their life, and the impact from them will gradually settle and fade and pass, like everything else does, if they're held within that huge mind space of metta, of patience, of equanimity. Well, I don't see any other questions popping up for this evening. So maybe we'll just end a little bit earlier than we usually do, and can all go and contemplate. Right. Yeah. I think we have a few announcements possibly here. We've got, first of all, this coming Friday, for those of you who are thinking about joining in, as we usually do on Friday morning, we'll be canceling that this week. We've got an influx of visitors from Abhayagiri Monastery coming up on Thursday night. And lots of activity happening in preparation for our Paba weekend coming up Saturday and Sunday. So go to our website if you're interested to hear more about the Paba celebration. Saturday, half-day meditation, Sunday, Paba ceremony. And I can't think of any other announcements at this time. No. Okay, so we'll call it an evening and have a good night.